But then we got good talk radio as a moment late in this game, the reigning MVP of the NBA, Nikola Jokic, involved in a melee, a scrum, a Donnybrook. Did you see it? Maybe not. So there's 2:39 to go in the fourth quarter. The game's already decided for all intents and purposes. Denver's going to win on the home court in Mile High City. And Nikola Jokic is dribbling the ball across the midcourt logo. And as he was looking to pass the ball, Markieff Morris, journeyman NBA player, came over there and bam! He threw down an elbow at Nikola. And Jokic responded. I don't know if we have the audio on this. The play-by-play actually is pretty good on this. I don't normally play NBA play-by-play, but the play-by-play on this is pretty good because they went back and forth. And I think we do have it here. So why don't we just play that? But again, there's like less than 3 minutes to go in the game. The game's already decided. The Nuggets have the ball. The Heat had just missed a shot. And so the Nuggets are bringing the ball back on transition. Jokic is crossing midcourt. In comes Markieff Morris, and then all hell breaks loose.
Oh my, Jokic just clobbered Markieff Morris from behind.
Wow.
Well, that might cost Jokic a game and some money, and now Jimmy Butler in the middle of things.
Ooh.
Oh, things are turning ugly here. Denver staff mixing it up with Heat players. Oh, Markieff Morris is hurt. In all of this, Morris is still on his back, clutching his shoulder. Why did Jokic go after Morris? We do not have an answer to that.
Boy, he threw that right elbow, hit Morris solidly. And Morris wasn't looking. It could have been a lot worse if he hit him in the head.
Oh, there is bad blood brewing between these two teams. Jimmy Butler at half court, finger pointing to the Denver bench.
We got staff members over on the Denver side talking to Jimmy, which is just crazy.
Meanwhile, Markieff Morris still on his back. 2:39 left in this game. Well, let's see how this whole thing began.
Well, Bam looked like he got fouled here. No call.
Oh, you see the bump by Morris and then that. Oh, my. All right, so he fouled him. And then Jokic cheap shots him.
Well, he hit him when he wasn't looking.
That's a nasty cheap shot by a great player.
All right, so that was the biased Miami Heat broadcast team. Not exactly how I saw the events that took place there, but it was the back and forth as Jokic responded after Morris came over with the elbow. Then Jokic gave the blindside shoulder bump, and Morris was down. Markieff Morris there, withering in pain, in agony. As Jimmy Butler, you heard the Miami Heat broadcasters describing as he was wandering around the court, yelling, pointing his finger at the Nuggets bench. Good times for all at a random Nugget Miami Heat game. So let's discuss the question. Who won the exchange between Nikola Jokic and Markieff Morris? So I don't have to be a boxing expert to tell you that the person who's laying on the court in agony is the one that lost the fight. So this is the advantage to the Joker. Advantage Joker on this. I've got Popeye, Tango, and Mad Doggin. And we will connect all of these things together, and we are going to make Rocky Mountain oysters, which I had to eat, by the way, after losing a bet on a Clipper Nugget series a couple years back. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. All right, so first of all, this was, for me, a throwback. It had the same vibe as back in the early 2000s, the Malice at the Palace. That same vibe was working. Now, it stayed somewhat civil, certainly compared to what happened at the old Palace of Auburn Hills. It stayed on the hardwood, and it was a lot of shouting, a lot of screaming, not a lot of physical activity here. This was a simple blow for a blow as Nikola Jokic snapped. He blew a fuse in this moment there, and I say good for him. That was a cheap shot. Now, the Miami Heat broadcasters clearly paid, the check says, from the Miami Heat. Biased here. The way I saw it, Nikola Jokic had a Popeye moment. Popeye the Sailor Man. Just like Popeye, Jokic said, "That's all I can stands. I can't stands no more." The MVP there. He was annoyed. He's like, wait a minute. I'm not getting the MVP package. The MVP package is where you're protected. I'm not getting that. He has a bullseye on his back there, and he reached his boiling point. Ka-boom for Nikola Jokic. Now, second, as for this Markieff Morris, he picked up a flagrant foul. He ended up with the worst of the confrontation, right? The old slobber knocker. Markieff, now he did have a cheerleader, though, in his head coach, Eric Spoelstra, the longtime coach in Miami. We have some audio here of the coach, as Warner Wolf would say. Let's go to the audio tape.
That was a very dangerous, dirty play. I thought Keith took a foul, and it was, one of those fast break take fouls, and he did with his shoulder. You might deem that, maybe as a little bit more, than just slapping somebody. But after I watched it on film, it was a take foul. That's how I saw it. And the play, after that, that's just absolutely uncalled for. And it would have looked a lot different. This whole thing could have been a whole lot uglier if Markieff was actually facing Jokic. The fact that he had his back turned and he made a play like that, blindsiding him, that's just a very dangerous play.
Yeah. All right. So, again, bias from the Miami Heat side. So, I have no skin in the game. I'm the perfect arbitrator of justice when it comes to this, and I have zero empathy for Markieff Morris. And the way I saw it, Morris here was the instigator and the agitator. It takes two to tango. The reason that Jokic went Popeye the Sailor Man and that's all I can take, I can't take no more, is because of the actions of Markieff Morris. He used a strategic dirty razor elbow to the rib cage of Jokic. It was a frustration foul. The Miami Heat did not expect that outcome. The Nuggets were shorthanded. They were without Michael Porter Jr. In fact, he's going to be out for a while, supposedly. And Denver was mopping the court with Miami. And Morris, inspired by things not going that way, he was the one that lit the match, that lit Jokic, and then showed that he got the shoulder block in return. There's a saying, if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So if you don't want Jokic to attack you, do not start by attacking him with an elbow. It's very simple here. It's not that hard. And as far as Eric Spoelstra saying, well, what's he supposed to do? He should have, I think his quote was, Jokic would have been much different if he had gone after Morris when Morris was facing him. Well, that's hard to do because it was a cheap shot foul by Markieff Morris, and what he did, what every NBA player does when they do a cheap shot foul, he did the elbow right to the rib cage and then turned and walked away, right? Like nothing happened. Like la 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 la. So Jokic, if Morris had, after delivering the elbow, stood there, he would have gotten the shoulder to the face, right? But instead, he turned and walked away. So what's Jokic supposed to do in that situation? All right, final thought. Let's address Jimmy Butler. I'm a Jimmy Butler fan. Jimmy Butler had all the theatrics. He was putting on a show. And I put on a show for the cameras. That was some vintage KD stuff. That was old school NBA, right? He was bouncing around, shadow boxing, mad dogging the Nuggets, pointing his finger, screaming at Jokic, screaming at the coaches. Of course, there were dozens and dozens of people between Butler and the coaches and between Butler and Jokic. And by the way, riddle me this, Batman. I don't know a lot about Nikola Jokic, but do you think that guy's intimidated by Jimmy Butler? Nikola Jokic, from what I understand, grew up in the middle of a war, the Balkan War, right? I've heard stories. I've read stories online. This guy, he was like 4 years old. He was a child, and they were bombing his home for, I think it was like over 2 months or 3 months, something like that. NATO troops bombed where Nikola Jokic was growing up. And he grew up to the sound of bombs. He had bomb shelter sirens, bomb sirens, all that stuff. If you live in a war-torn land like he did, and like a legitimate war where hundreds of thousands of people died, like a real war, not some a half-ass war, like a legit war. So I'm pretty confident that he's not too worried about some spicy language by Jimmy Butler, but you never know. Right, I would advise anybody who messes with Jokic, though, to avoid the Jokic brothers, because those guys are trouble. Now, the Jokic brothers, they got nothing to lose. They got nothing to lose. They're never that far away. So how many games will Nikola Jokic be suspended? Keep in mind, he is one of the stars of the NBA. He is a most valuable player in the NBA. I am going to predict here. I've got my crystal ball, the Big Ben crystal ball. I say since Markieff Morris started, and again, we've determined through a thorough investigation that Markieff Morris of the Heat, the instigator and the agitator in this situation, I say a 1-game suspension and a fine. A 1-game suspension and a fine for Nikola Jokic, and also a contract offer from Dana White as he can join the UFC as a heavyweight contender. A heavyweight contender for the championship of the world.